The man had no idea that the sweet, comforting cashier he met every day at register number 2 and the hot, rebellious girl he randomly ran into at the supermarket's back door at night were actually the exact same person. Looking at her practiced movements, Sasaki couldn't see any traces of the supermarket employee in her at all. Warning, warning, danger ahead. Her teasing actions instantly made Sasaki blush with embarrassment. After all, as an ordinary middle-aged guy, he had never faced this kind of temptation before. Our protagonist Sasaki is a corporate wage slave who has been ground down by work for a long time. He's getting up there in age but is still single. His daily life completely consumed by work. From morning till night, he's either handling business or constantly getting chewed out by his boss. Sometimes he's even forced to stay for overtime until late at night. The constant high pressure leaves him with almost no personal space. The only place where he can catch a brief break is the supermarket on his way home. To him, Miss Yamada at register number 2 is his most important source of emotional support for the day. Every time he queues up, just seeing her polite and gentle smile makes all the exhaustion built up during the day vanish in an instant. Even though they see each other almost every day, their interaction is strictly professional. They've never exchanged a single unnecessary word. Even his name was just something Yamada happened to spot on his loyalty card or a receipt. Yamada's look at work is very standard, with straight bangs, light makeup, and a neat uniform. She looks like a perfectly ordinary, friendly cashier. Her smile is so comforting that he wouldn't dare overstep, and because of this very distance, Sasaki finds himself relying even more on those few short minutes during checkout. But reality never goes the way you want it to. On this day, he got chewed out again by his boss over a minor mistake. He was even forced to work late into the night before he could finish. By the time he dragged his exhausted body out of the office, the only thing on his mind was the supermarket. He wanted to catch a glimpse of Yamada's smile to make himself feel alive again. However, when he rushed to the supermarket, Yamada wasn't at register number 2. Instead, it was an older cashier, and in that instant he realized Yamada had the day off. This sudden disappointment instantly dampened his spirits. Standing at the supermarket entrance, he felt incredibly suffocated. He instinctively wanted to light up a cigarette to relieve some stress, but right after sparking it, a passerby reminded him it was a non-smoking area. Having even this tiny release taken away, he was left frustratedly looking around for a smoking area. But after searching all over, he couldn't find a single suitable spot. Just as he was about to give up, a voice suddenly came from behind him saying, "This is the supermarket's back door. You can hang out there for a bit." He turned around and saw a red-haired girl, wearing stylish clothes that clearly didn't match the supermarket staff uniform, with a bold, almost street-style vibe, looking nothing like she worked there. Hardly anyone can tell the difference between staff and outsiders anyway. Though he was a bit skeptical, her casual tone won him over, and he followed her anyway. The corner by the back door was dimly lit, but it had a quiet sense of isolation from the outside world. He sat down and lit his cigarette. The moment the smoke drifted away, his nerves, which had been tense all day, finally began to unwind. It was only then that he noticed the red-haired girl had been watching him. She said bluntly, "I just wanted to borrow a lighter," and casually added that she felt like she'd seen him before. Specifically, how he lines up at checkout counter number 2 basically every day. This made Sasaki instantly on guard, because counter number 2 was where Yamada worked. He quickly explained it was just a coincidence, but she casually pointed out that even when other registers are completely empty, he still goes to counter 2. Such a habit is way too obvious to be a coincidence. She then added, "No matter how you look at it, that kind of behavior means you like the cashier." The air instantly grew a bit awkward, and Sasaki started to panic a little. He quickly explained that he wasn't someone with weird intentions. He just genuinely liked how Yamada looked when she was working. Her smile made him feel like all his exhaustion from the day was healed, as if he'd been fully recharged. Hearing this, the girl went quiet for a moment, but then seemed to relax. She had actually been worried that some weird customer was targeting Yamada, but now it seemed those worries were unnecessary. Then she casually introduced herself as Tayama, but Sasaki didn't think too much of it. The next day, as usual, Sasaki headed to the supermarket after work. He was waiting in line at register 2 again when he saw Yamada. What happened at the back door last night flashed through his mind, causing him to zone out for a moment until Yamada snapped him back to reality to pay. He quickly paid, but just as he was about to leave, Yamada suddenly called him by name, leaving Sasaki completely stunned. Since they had never introduced themselves, Yamada explained she got his name from his membership card. She also mentioned her coworker Tayama had told her about him, and that he always seemed to queue up at register 2. This made Sasaki instantly realize that the red-haired girl from last night was Yamada's coworker, but before he could process this, Yamada smiled and thanked him for being such a regular customer. As he walked away, Yamada stood behind the counter with a mysterious smile. Drop by the smoking area again sometime. In the days that followed, Sasaki went back to his daily grind, slaving away at work by day and waiting in line at register 2 by night. But things slowly started to change. Sometimes Yamada would make small talk while checking him out, like mentioning the snacks he usually bought, or bringing up little things unrelated to work. These subtle changes only made him pay more attention to her. One night, he was held up late by work, feeling completely exhausted and on the verge of a breakdown. By the time he finally rushed to the supermarket, Yamada was already gone. Feeling a wave of disappointment, he walked out and instinctively headed toward the back door. Sure enough, the red-haired girl was sitting there, smoking a cigarette. She greeted him casually, as if she knew he would show up. This time, Sasaki didn't hesitate and confronted her directly, asking why she had told Yamada about him hanging around the supermarket, which made things awkward at checkout. Tayama brushed it off, saying she just mentioned it in passing. Then she added, actually, Yamada was really happy to hear it. Sasaki didn't buy it, but he had no way to prove her wrong. To thank her for lending him a light earlier, he handed Tayama the snacks he'd just bought. Tayama took them, accepting the gesture completely naturally. The vibe between them was way more relaxed than when they first met. Sasaki wanted to grab a smoke but reached into his pocket only to realize he had left his cigarettes at the office. Seeing this, Tayama just offered him the cigarette right out of her own mouth. This instantly made the atmosphere feel a little loaded. Sasaki immediately turned her down and went ahead and stubbed out her cigarette for her. Tayama laughed, saying, "He really is as serious as they get," without even denying she was teasing him. She even flat out admitted that watching his reactions was her own way of unwinding. To her, the way Sasaki always showed up at cash register number 2 was a comforting constant, just like how he relied on Yamada's smile. But Sasaki didn't really take it to heart, just writing it off as nonsense. The next day at work, a colleague noticed the snacks he brought in and casually teased him about always buying the exact same things. That's when it clicked for Sasaki. He realized he had been subconsciously buying the same snacks every time he went to the supermarket. And now he had a massive pile at home. And this habit was actually tied entirely to his routine of going to see Yamada. After work, he headed to the supermarket again, picking up the same exact items. But this time, Yamada suddenly mentioned that she had been eating those same snacks lately too. She said someone gave them to her and they tasted great. Hearing this, Sasaki immediately thought of Tayama. A bunch of loose threads in his mind were finally starting to connect. "You're really good at writing. Wow. Are you guys really close?" But even so, he still didn't think any deeper than that. Meanwhile, out by the back door, Tayama was still keeping up this three-person dynamic. It was as if the same space had been split into day and night versions. "I feel like I'm getting dragged into this clueless middle-aged guy's fantasy." The cashier girl never would have guessed that her rigorously trained customer service smile would fail to work for the first time on this middle-aged corporate drone. Normally, as long as Sasaki came to register number 2 and saw her smile, he would instantly and visibly relax. Even if it was just a brief chat about some store promotions, or telling him that a certain snack was about to go on sale, he would always look so genuinely happy. But today was completely different. No matter how much Yamada reminded him that the point campaign was ending, or that his favorite mochi chips would be on sale tomorrow, Sasaki just nodded mechanically, looking completely drained of energy. This naturally made Yamada worry about what could have happened to make this older guy, who usually cheers right up just from seeing her smile, act this way. Meanwhile, Sasaki was indeed feeling down as he finished his shopping. Dragging his exhausted body out of the supermarket, his mind was a complete mess. All he wanted was to find a place to smoke and relax. Before he knew it, he found himself at the familiar back door, which was actually a staff-only smoking area. Ever since he met Tayama, this had become his favorite spot to unwind after work. But today, the back door was empty. Tayama wasn't there. Sasaki stood there, hesitating for a long time, thinking, after all, this is a staff area. Without Tayama around, he felt too awkward using it since he was an outsider. Just then, a familiar voice called out from behind him. She hadn't even had time to tie her hair up. "I only left my hair like this because I was feeling lazy." Unfortunately, Sasaki still didn't suspect a thing. Even though Yamada and Tayama are actually the exact same person, he just couldn't connect the dots. But maybe that's exactly why Tayama was able to hang out with him without any pressure. The two quickly sat in their usual spots, and as the smoke drifted up, Sasaki let out a heavy sigh. Tayama immediately noticed something was off. At first, Sasaki didn't want to talk about it, until Tayama brought up Yamada, telling him that Miss Yamada had noticed he seemed off while at the register today, looking completely drained of energy, and was really worried about him. Hearing this, Sasaki was deeply touched. In his eyes, Yamada was just as kind and caring as he had always thought. She even noticed a mood change in an ordinary customer like him. And on top of that, Tayama had gone out of her way to come and tell him. So Sasaki sincerely thanked Tayama. Tayama was left speechless, especially since he was the one standing right there. But this clueless older guy didn't realize it at all. Seeing him like this, Tayama decided to just ask the key question. What exactly happened? Faced with the question, Sasaki finally opened up about his worries. It turns out, a fresh graduate had recently joined his company. The rookie made a minor, not-so-serious mistake at work. As their senior, Sasaki just wanted to give them a heads up and offer a few words of comfort. But the rookie totally misunderstood his intentions. They not only burst into tears right then and there, but they also couldn't stop crying. After things escalated, the manager gave Sasaki a harsh scolding. Rumors started spreading around the office, with everyone saying he made the rookie cry. But instead of worrying about getting chewed out, Sasaki was more concerned about something else. He was worried the rookie would end up hating the job, and maybe even the whole company. If things really turned out that way, he would feel extremely guilty. After hearing the whole story, Tayama couldn't help but laugh. He had originally thought Sasaki yelled at work and made the rookie cry. To his surprise, it was only something like this. In his eyes, this wasn't a big deal at all. After all, the rookie is fresh to society, so there is still a lot they don't know, and it's only normal that they'd get overwhelmed. Besides, Sasaki's company is known for making people work late into the night. It's a textbook black company. Who knows, once the rookie realizes the truth later on, the first person they thank might actually be Sasaki. As for the current misunderstanding, it'll be cleared up sooner or later, assuming they can stick it out. Hearing this, Sasaki's tense nerves finally relaxed a bit. But just then, he brought up Yamada again. In his eyes, Yamada was truly amazing. She always has a bright smile on her face and stays cheerful even when working late at night. She even takes good care of a high-maintenance customer like him. If only he could work with a smile like Yamada, maybe he wouldn't have scared the rookie. Hearing this, Tayama could barely keep a straight face, because the sweet and perfect Yamada Sasaki was talking about was actually him, so he purposely told Sasaki a secret. That kind of perfect smile isn't actually natural. It's something the supermarket specially trains you to do. You have to raise your eyes slightly, and keep a natural curve at the corners of your mouth. Lift your facial muscles while showing your upper teeth. That's how you get that standard customer service smile. As he explained this, Tayama even gave a live demonstration. Seeing the usually cool Tayama suddenly pull off a standard customer service smile, Sasaki couldn't help but burst out laughing. He never would have guessed that Tayama had such a cute side to him, but his laughing ended up annoying Tayama a bit. So, he put out his cigarette and told him he wouldn't learn just by watching. Then he stepped in to guide him personally, touching his face and adjusting the corners of his mouth. He even had Sasaki practice along. The whole thing felt just like a private tutoring session. Too bad that even after all that practice, the result was still painful to look at. In the end, this smile training session could only end in failure. Still, after all that chatting and comforting, Sasaki's mood had clearly improved a lot. At least he wasn't as gloomy as before. Seeing Sasaki cheer up again, Tayama secretly felt a wave of relief. The next day, the unexpected actually happened. The new employee who had cried came up to Sasaki on his own initiative. He sincerely apologized to Sasaki, saying he had just been way too nervous yesterday. On top of that, being new to the workforce, the pressure was so overwhelming that he lost control of his emotions. But after getting to know things better, he realized Sasaki was actually a very kind person. Not at all the mean senior colleague everyone rumored him to be, so he wanted to come and apologize. Hearing this, Sasaki was completely stunned, because everything Tayama had said the night before had actually come true. The newcomer finally saw his good intentions, and Sasaki could finally let it go. Then, stepping into his role as the senior, he comforted the guy, saying that making mistakes when you've just started working is completely normal, and there was no need to dwell on it. He could always come to him if he ran into any trouble in the future. With the matter resolved happily, the dark cloud that had been hanging over him finally cleared away. After work that day, Sasaki went to the supermarket again. The familiar register number 2, the familiar Yamada, and the familiar smile. And this time, that highly trained customer service smile finally worked its magic again. Seeing Yamada's gentle smile, Sasaki felt comforted and went back to his usual self, while on the other side of the register, Yamada saw that Sasaki was cheering up and quietly let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, she remembered what Sasaki had said the night before. He had said, "Tayama is actually really cute when she smiles." Thinking of this, Yamada couldn't help but smile too. Maybe she hadn't even realized it herself, but that middle-aged guy who always lined up at register 2 had already taken up a special place in her heart. It was just a regular weekday evening, and Sasaki had just been chewed out by a client. Feeling completely down, he originally just wanted to stop by the supermarket to buy some things and catch his breath. But as he walked past the smoking area near the back door, Tayama's face popped into his head. Even though they had only interacted briefly, he didn't know when it started, but her name had become the first one he'd think of whenever he needed to decompress. But just as he was hesitating whether to go over, something unexpected happened. He actually saw Tayama in the smoking area, but unlike the calm, gentle clerk she usually was, she was clearly in a bad mood, with a pile of cigarette butts at her feet and looking visibly irritated. Sasaki was about to speak, but she beat him to it and interrupted, asking him directly if he was off today. When she learned it was his rare day off, Tayama couldn't help but complain. The company is just too exploitative. Her voice was thick with bottled-up frustration, but Sasaki didn't pry right away. He just noticed something was wrong, so he turned and walked toward the vending machine, feeling that compared to cigarettes and alcohol, a hot drink was much better suited to help someone calm down. And during this brief pause, Tayama finally opened up about the reason. She had been complained about by a customer today for a reason so absurd it was exhausting. The customer had always thought her service was great, but today complained they smelled smoke on her and expressed disappointment. Although the manager tried to comfort her, saying it was just unreasonable, hurt feelings don't just vanish with a simple word of comfort. Tayama just felt confused. She was still the exact same person, yet because of a single detail, she was completely written off. Sasaki fell silent for a moment after hearing this. He suddenly realized that he had experienced this exact same feeling before. When you see a different side to someone, the trust you once had can instantly waver. But as soon as those words left his mouth, he couldn't help but laugh at himself a little. Because honestly, he didn't know Tayama at all. He didn't even know which aisle of the supermarket he worked in. Just as things were getting a bit quiet, a cold night breeze blew in and Sasaki couldn't help but sneeze. After a brief moment of hesitation, he ended up handing over his jacket anyway. It wasn't a demand or anything forced, he just said it so naturally. "Here, put this on." In that moment, Sasaki froze. It was just a jacket, but somehow it felt like it brought them just a little bit closer. And as they stood there together in front of the vending machine, that subtle shift in their dynamic kept growing. Tayama mentioned he didn't drink coffee, and Sasaki replied that he couldn't drink it either, followed by a brief shared silence. Then they both cracked up at the same time. It turns out, even a tiny thing like that in common can make you feel surprisingly close to someone. They ended up getting energy drinks, and that brief moment of relief managed to lift their spirits, but the story doesn't end there. A few days later, as the weather started getting warmer, Sasaki had to deal with another rough day. Exhausted from getting chewed out by a client, he headed to the supermarket just to grab some lunch. But walking past the back door, he thought of Tayama again. This time, without hesitating, he walked right over. But instead of Tayama, Yamada was the one standing there. He was surprised to see him on the day shift, since Yamada usually works nights. It turned out someone had called in sick, so he was covering for them. As for why he was hanging out in the smoking area, while Sasaki had his eyes closed, taking a deep breath, Yamada quickly slipped his cigarettes into his pocket and explained, "This is the only spot around here with a vending machine." Sasaki mentioned he was hoping to catch Tayama for a quick smoke before heading back to work. Then, worrying Yamada might get the wrong idea, he quickly added, "I know I'm not really supposed to be here, but I guess I couldn't resist using the special privilege Ms. Tayama gave me." Yamada told him not to worry, saying he already knew all about it because Tayama had mentioned it. Sasaki figured the two of them must get along really well, since they're both so incredibly thoughtful and considerate. Hearing this, a sudden realization hit Sasaki. He'd actually started to care about Tayama, not just as a casual coworker, but the kind of caring where you find yourself constantly wondering how they're doing. So he asked about Tayama, and Yamada told him she was doing fine. She'd already bounced back and even said she'd sleep it off and forget all about it. At the same time, he took the opportunity to say he hoped Sasaki would keep letting Tayama vent to him in the future. But Sasaki shook his head, feeling that since she'd already moved on, there was no need to make her relive those unpleasant memories. This took Yamada by surprise for a moment, but then he smiled softly and said in that case, he said he'd accept that kind sentiment on Tayama's behalf. During this chat, Sasaki suddenly remembered a small detail. Yamada had also shown concern for him before, so he thanked him, feeling a little self-conscious. He mentioned how exhausted he got from work, so even a simple "how are you doing" made him feel incredibly warm inside. Hearing this, Yamada just smiled and said he'd actually always wanted to chat with him as naturally as Tayama did. And now that they finally had the chance, the mood gradually lightened up. Yama even told him that even though Tayama wasn't there, he was welcome to hang out anytime. But after a moment's thought, Sasaki made an unexpected decision. He decided not to smoke today for a very simple reason. He didn't want to leave the smell of smoke behind. He said it so casually, yet it caught Yamada off guard. Just as he was about to leave, Yamada suddenly called out to him. Sasaki froze on the spot, looking a little goofy in that moment. Yamada couldn't help but chuckle himself, saying, "I just found you too cute just now, so I couldn't help it." And that was when Sasaki realized for the first time that this seemingly quiet, gentle guy actually had a playful side. After he left, Yamada stood there watching his back, gently tying up his hair with a lingering smile. Walking home, Sasaki also felt strangely lighter. He never could have imagined that Miss Tayama, the delinquent-looking girl he met daily behind the supermarket, somehow seemed to see right through his life. No matter how he was doing that day, she could always spot it instantly, even guessing perfectly when he'd just been chewed out by his boss. But there was a secret behind all of this. Miss Tayama's real identity was actually Yamada, the cashier at that very supermarket. He had just approached him in a different way, keeping tabs on what he recently bought at the store, along with his facial expressions, like that time he bought deodorant with a miserable look on his face. He had already figured out that people at his company were complaining about his cigarette smell. Connecting that with his smoking habit and how depressed he usually looked, he quickly pieced the whole picture together. That's why he went out of his way to meet him at the supermarket's back door that day, striking up a conversation as Tayama. When he asked, he found out that, as expected, his boss had chewed him out at work because of the cigarette smell. Instead of saying much, Tayama just gave him a direct solution. Just brush your teeth after smoking and use a little deodorizing spray, and that should cover up most of the smell. Even if people at work are looking for trouble, they won't catch you so easily. Then he handed him the spray he always uses, telling him to give it a try. Sasaki took it, feeling pretty curious, and wanted to smell it directly. But just as he was about to spray it, Tayama stopped him. He said, "I sprayed some right around here, so why don't you try smelling it?" At that moment, Sasaki was completely stunned. He even tried to explain in all seriousness that he wasn't the type to do anything inappropriate or flirtatious. He even started to wonder if Tayama was just teasing him like some kind of pet. Hearing this, Tayama just laughed and casually replied, "Probably like a Labrador retriever." That comment actually made the atmosphere a bit awkward. The next day, Sasaki did exactly what he suggested. Brushing his teeth right after smoking and using the spray actually worked like a charm at the office. His boss stopped nagging him, and his coworkers even said he smelled much cleaner. This instantly made him trust Tayama a whole lot more. But that evening, when he ran into Tayama at the supermarket again, Tayama suddenly asked him in a slightly teasing tone if he had done something bad today. It was just a casual joke. But Sasaki's reaction was much more dramatic than he expected. He blushed so hard he couldn't even speak. Tayama had originally just wanted to tease him a bit, but he ended up feeling flustered by Sasaki's reaction instead. He even got a bit panicked when an older coworker nearby started asking questions. He had to quickly explain he was just teasing. But after all that back and forth, he actually ended up blushing first. Since the method really did work, Sasaki started to look at Tayama as some kind of savior. To show his appreciation, he went to the department store to pick out a gift. He was planning to give it to her, but just as he familiarly walked up to the smoking area behind the supermarket, things suddenly changed. This time, the person sitting there wasn't Tayama, but a completely unfamiliar woman with glasses, leaving Sasaki totally stunned. Before he could even react, she demanded to know who he was and why he was trespassing, even threatening to call the police on him. Sasaki was totally caught off guard by her intense attitude and quickly explained he was looking for Tayama, saying she'd invited him there to smoke. Hearing the name Tayama, the glasses woman paused for a moment. Clearly, she didn't know anyone by that name and asked if he had the wrong name. She said there was no Tayama working there, but they did have a Yamada at register too. Sasaki immediately denied it, insisting he was looking for Tayama, not Yamada. Plus, he described her as a cool-looking, really reliable girl who often hung out there. Hearing this, the glasses woman finally put two and two together. She figured it was probably some kind of prank disguise, so her attitude softened a bit, thinking he had just been teased. But when Sasaki pulled out the gift and said it was a thank you gift for Tayama, she grew suspicious again. She started to wonder if he was being used as an ATM. Sasaki quickly clarified that it was just a simple gesture of gratitude, with no strings attached. Once she saw he was sincere, she let her guard down and agreed to take the gift, promising to pass it along to Yamada. Sasaki finally breathed a sigh of relief and hurried off. Right after he left, Yamada finally showed up at the back door. The glasses woman, who turned out to be the store manager, filled her in on what just happened and scolded her for using a fake name to smoke with a customer out back, pointing out that it was crossing a line. At first, the manager thought it was just a harmless joke, but she didn't expect Yamada's reaction. When she heard about the gift, she silently clutched the bag to her chest, clearly looking like she cared a lot. This immediately changed the manager's perspective, and she started to suspect there was more to it, sensing a hint of romance in the air. To a night shift manager who was bored out of her mind, this development was like a plot gift from above, so he just decided to let things play out between them. Though on the outside, he still pretended to be serious. Early the next morning, Sasaki was still worried if what happened yesterday would cause trouble for Tayama, even wondering if he wouldn't be able to smoke at the back door anymore. Meanwhile, the manager was already fully absorbed in his own romantic fantasies, reading manga while imagining how the plot would unfold. Before long, Yamada approached the manager and hesitantly asked if that guy could keep smoking at the back door. The manager calmly replied, "As long as it doesn't affect work, it's fine." In reality, he was thrilled to get the gossip and even made sure to add, "Report any developments to me immediately." Yamada found it a bit absurd but agreed anyway. That evening, Sasaki went to the back door again. This time he hesitated, unsure of whether to go in, worrying if he'd cause trouble for Tayama. But as he stood there spacing out, a familiar voice came from behind. It was Tayama. Sasaki immediately told him what had happened the day before. It was only then he learned that the woman with glasses was actually his boss, the store manager. Luckily, things turned out fine, and she had already given him silent permission to keep smoking there. Meanwhile, Tayama pulled out the gift Sasaki had given him, a cute-looking ashtray. He couldn't help but smile just looking at it, because he could picture Sasaki browsing the mall to pick it out. Looking clumsy yet so earnest, he found the contrast really endearing. Hearing this, Sasaki started wondering if Tayama was reading him again, feeling even more convinced that he had mind-reading powers. Just then, Tayama glanced at the cigarette in his hand and said it was time to ash it, offering him the new ashtray. Sasaki was already nervous, and with Tayama leaning in so close, he instantly blushed. But just as he was about to tap the ash, something unexpected happened. A static shock made his hand twitch, freezing him in place and instantly breaking the mood. By the next day, Sasaki's hand still seemed a bit stiff and awkward. When Tayama saw this, she couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. Sasaki thought there was something wrong with him and anxiously asked, "What happened?" Tayama quickly explained it was just an accident and kept apologizing. Though Sasaki didn't understand what was going on, he apologized too. This whole scene was spotted by the store manager and an older colleague nearby. The two of them instantly got that gossipy look on their faces. This relationship unfolding at the back door kept moving in a direction that neither of them openly admitted. Through these subtle, awkward interactions, he never imagined that an ordinary middle-aged office worker like himself would one day find his life completely disrupted by a cashier who loves to smoke and a punk-looking smoking buddy who always hangs around the back door, getting played around in a rhythm he couldn't quite put his finger on. And what's even weirder is that the root of all this actually started with an old keypad phone that suddenly broke down. Just this morning, as usual, he was reading the newspaper with his glasses on before heading to work. He was still living like an 80-year-old, even though he's only in his 30s or 40s. A colleague walked past and couldn't help but tease him. "You haven't even retired yet, but you're so behind the times you don't even use a smartphone." He tried to explain, "My keypad phone works perfectly fine." But before he could even finish his sentence, the phone completely froze and died. It was like fate didn't even care to hear him out, so he had no choice but to go buy a smartphone. But that came with its own set of problems. He had no clue how to close apps or return to the home screen. To him, it was all gibberish. He couldn't even figure out how to use the basic camera function. In the end, he had to ask Ms. Tayama at the supermarket for help, hoping she could walk him through the basic tutorial. But to his surprise, this seemingly gentle and professional cashier actually had a bit of a mischievous side while guiding him. She teased him a little while, showing him which buttons to press. It was like she enjoyed watching him panic. Luckily, he picked up the basics pretty quickly. But then a new problem came up: the font size was way too small. He had to put on his glasses just to see it, so he asked Tayama to help him make the text bigger. But Tayama didn't do it right away. Instead, she just stared at his glasses for a moment. She made a weird condition, telling him he has to wear his glasses properly from now on. The protagonist didn't really get it, thinking she just meant it would be hard to do. He had no choice but to hand over his phone, and that's when things started going off script. On the surface, Tayama seemed to be helping him with his settings, but then she suddenly made a mischievous proposal. She offered to save her own contact info into his phone. He panicked immediately, feeling like his privacy was being invaded, and tried to stop her. But Tayama didn't care at all. While he was flustered and distracted, she secretly took a photo of his panicked face, and he had absolutely no idea. He thought she was just adjusting his font. When she was done, Tayama handed his phone back, smiling as she said, "I was just kidding, I didn't do anything." But whether that was true or not, nobody knows. Once she got back to the supermarket locker room, Tayama pulled up the photo she had just taken. Looking at him on her screen, she whispered, "Energy fully recharged." Then she went back to work, while our guy went about his usual routine the next day. During their lunch break, a coworker brought up a game that's popular among young people. Supposedly, you can tell someone's personality by their favorite brand of cigarettes. The coworker seriously analyzed himself as the straightforward, loyal, non-cheating type. But our guy took a quick glance and added a comment, pointing out that it also said slow-witted and socially awkward on the back. The coworker snapped instantly, firing back that he was actually the socially awkward one. The whole thing blew over, but he never expected that this weird personality test would soon be brought up by him to Tayama. He eagerly showed her the results. Tayama wanted to say it's just for entertainment and shouldn't be taken seriously, but he was already completely invested. He even read his own results aloud, which said he seemed aloof on the outside, but was actually a masochist. Hearing this, Tayama almost choked on her cigarette. She went completely silent, and before she could even recover, he asked for her results. Tayama casually replied that she was two-faced and had an extremely high sex drive, which completely stunned him. He froze right there, looking like his brain had completely short-circuited. Unable to even speak, the guy realized he had probably said the wrong thing again. He immediately apologized, saying he shouldn't have brought up such an awkward topic, and for making Tayama give such a weird opinion. But Tayama was much calmer than him. He said that while he indeed didn't like dirty jokes, since it was the guy who had shared it with him, he didn't feel offended at all, so there was no need to apologize. He even added, "If I join in on a topic and you end up apologizing to me for it, that would be the real weird thing." Hearing this, the guy could only give a wry smile, and casually remarked, maybe that personality test was actually kind of accurate. At least the two-faced part seemed to explain some of Tayama's behavior. But the moment he said that, the atmosphere instantly changed. Tayama thought he had finally realized something. But the next second, the guy started rambling again with excuses, babbling about how he was cool but kind. Utterly speechless, Tayama just stuffed a cigarette into his mouth to shut him up. Then he pulled out a lighter and asked if he wanted a light, though he didn't actually end up lighting it. He just teased, "Are you mad? You're not mad, are you?" And just like that, their awkward cigarette chat ended. The next day, the guy went to the supermarket to shop as usual. But when choosing a checkout lane, he suddenly hesitated. He started to wonder if he was bothering Tayama too much lately. Just as he was about to switch lanes, Tayama suddenly called out to him. This time, he didn't have his usual slight teasing smile. Instead, he seemed pretty quiet, looking almost a little annoyed. While the guy stood there not knowing how to react, the store manager walked by and immediately sensed something was up, like he'd found some interesting drama, making a mental note of it. As the weather gradually got warmer, the company still required everyone to wear their thick uniforms. They weren't allowed to switch to summer clothes yet, and the guy was absolutely roasting, so after work one afternoon, he stopped by the supermarket for some ice cream to cool off. But the moment he walked in, he saw Tayama had already changed into her summer uniform. Her bare arms looked incredibly refreshing under the lights, instantly making him feel like even getting ice cream was pointless. He ended up turning around and leaving without buying a thing, which Tayama noticed. The next night, Tayama switched back to her smoking buddy persona and asked him about it, straight up questioning why he left the second he saw Yamada. The protagonist didn't want to explain at first, but with her constant pressing, he had to dodge the question, claiming he just wanted to buy ice cream, but felt refreshed enough just from the store's air conditioning. Tayama obviously didn't buy it. She kept teasing him, asking if he ran away because he saw her in short sleeves. Having his mind read so easily, he blushed instantly and had to admit it. Hearing this, Tayama chuckled and said she actually wore short sleeves today too. She asked if he wanted to cool off again, and before he could even react, she slipped off her jacket, instantly making the atmosphere pretty tense. He was completely stunned, expecting her to act shy and reserved like most girls. But she wasn't like that at all, and his own reaction completely caught Tayama off guard. Instead of making any kind of move, he looked at her with pure concern and asked, "Won't you catch a cold?" That single question completely threw Tayama off, totally ruining her playful vibe. She realized this older guy's train of thought was just on a completely different wavelength. Without thinking too much about it, he just handed her his own jacket to cover up. Tayama was taken aback for a second, but then she went ahead and put it on, with absolutely no intention of giving it back. Right then, their dynamic started to shift in a strange way. Later that night, Tayama kept thinking about his different reactions to her two identities. She suddenly realized something when she was the cashier, just showing her bare arms was enough to catch his eye. But when she was Tayama, her smoking buddy self, even if she did something much bolder, he didn't seem to care at all. This contrast started bothering her more and more. In the end, she came to a conclusion: this older guy only reacts to very specific, subtle details. And what's worse, he's unconsciously making completely opposite judgments about the exact same person, just in different roles. The guy never expected that just trying to relax with a smoke at the supermarket's back door would end up with him getting drenched by the manager, throwing his whole day completely off track. It even vaguely dragged him into dealing with Miss Tayama, who is totally hard to read. So after work that day, he went to the back door of the supermarket as usual. He was just about to light up a cigarette before he could even relax, when the manager suddenly appeared and splashed him with a bucket of water, soaking him to the bone. The manager apologized profusely, saying a customer had just spilled milk all over the floor. He was busy cleaning it up and didn't see him there, so he accidentally splashed him. Though he was totally annoyed, since he was already there, he just shrugged it off and decided to have his smoke anyway. Compared to his slightly flirtatious yet tense dynamic with Miss Tayama, his relationship with the manager was actually more direct, but way more awkward. They even had to force the conversation to keep it from getting weird. To break the ice, he thanked the manager for lending him a towel and some pants. But the manager waved it off, saying, "Don't worry about it. After all, it's my fault your clothes got wet in the first place." Then, the manager told him he didn't need to be so formal, since technically speaking, they're actually around the same age. Hearing this, he was completely stunned. He thought the manager just looked young, but the guy was actually 40. On top of that, he's running the busiest supermarket in the area. This contrast immediately filled him with respect. After all, he knew a job like that comes with high pressure and requires real capability. But seeing how he actually became even more tense, the manager decided to change the subject and asked if he always gets this shocked whenever he hears someone's age. Like, was he also this surprised when he found out Miss Tayama's age? But his reply caught the manager completely off guard. He confessed that he actually had no idea how old Miss Tayama was. This left the manager speechless. They literally smoked together almost every day, yet they never even exchanged basic info. He started to wonder if he just had zero interest in her. He quickly defended himself, saying, "It's not that I'm not interested. Rather, he's just more used to listening, and he never really brings up personal questions. Instead of getting direct answers, he prefers to piece together who they are through their conversations." He even told her, "Miss Tayama, you can just share whatever you feel like sharing," and he'd just figure out the rest on his walk back home. When he said this, the manager's expression shifted, becoming a bit hard to read. It was like he suddenly realized something, though our main guy didn't notice at all. Unbeknownst to them, Miss Tayama was standing nearby and had heard the whole thing. Sensing something was up, the manager raised his voice and put him on the spot. He asked if he liked Ms. Tayama, which immediately sent him into a panic. Since he was too chicken to answer, the manager tried a different angle. He asked if he disliked her, and after a moment he said, "Well, I don't dislike her." That only made things more awkward, so the manager kept digging. He pressed for how he actually felt, and just as he was about to explain, Miss Tayama suddenly stepped out from around the corner. She cut the conversation short, and luckily for him, the manager got called away to deal with a complaint. With the manager gone, a heavy silence settled between the two of them. He immediately asked her, "Wait, how much of that did you actually hear?" She calmly replied, "Oh, I didn't hear a thing." He let out a sigh of relief and was about to play off the awkward moment with some random excuse, when suddenly she leaned in close and started fixing his hair. She did it so naturally that it completely caught him off guard, freezing him in place. Then she leaned down further and whispered something that made his mind go totally blank. So what do those numbers mean? After that day, he entered a brutal 2-week stretch of non-stop overtime. The company dumped a ton of sudden tasks on him, forcing him to work late every single night. He kept missing the last train home, right as the rainy season officially kicked off. The gloomy weather perfectly matched his mood, lasting all the way until his first day off. On his way back, he ended up running into Ms. Tayama. Noticing how exhausted he looked, she asked him if he could help her with something. She led him to the supermarket's smoking area, where there was now a basket full of paper rain dolls. These are decorations the store manager used to pray for good luck during the rainy season. Both staff and customers can doodle on them. Tayama drew his own version and made a point of showing it to the male lead. After looking at it, the male lead just nodded, not really having much to say. But the mood clearly lightened up, and only then did Tayama reveal his real motive. He wanted the male lead to draw some for him too, and of course he didn't refuse. With a quick sketch, the first one he drew turned out looking exactly like the store manager. It was so spot on that Tayama couldn't help but laugh right then and there, saying it looked just like him. Next, the male lead drew one for Tayama. It captured his features perfectly too. Tayama complained about it, but he obviously cared a bit. He quickly changed the subject though, and drew one for the male lead in return. Looking at the drawing, the male lead didn't comment on the artwork itself, but suddenly said, "This is really nice." Tayama thought he was praising his drawing skills. But as it turned out, the male lead was talking about the cigarette smoke in the rain. He explained, "I love smoking on rainy days the most, because the smoke becomes really visible and tastes smoother. It makes him feel completely relaxed, but lately he's been so busy with work that he hadn't felt this way in a long time." As he spoke, his voice grew softer and softer. All his exhaustion suddenly caught up with him, and before long, he fell asleep sitting against the wall. Tayama watched him, stood in silence for a moment, and gently took the cigarette that was about to fall from his lips. Later, when the male lead woke up, he was already lying in his own bed. There were some drawings on the back of his hand, simple doodles and friendly greetings Tayama had drawn. Though they weren't masterpiece drawings, they were clearly meant just for him. Standing in the hallway looking at these drawings, the male lead lit a cigarette. As he stared at them under the sunlight, for some reason, all his built-up exhaustion and gloom seemed to vanish instantly. Meanwhile, Tayama was also enjoying his day off. He had originally planned to just grab some groceries and head home to rest, but he ran into the male lead again at the supermarket. So, feeling a bit playful, he decided to sneak up and scare him from behind. But at the last second, he changed his mind and went for a more direct approach. As a result, the male lead almost jumped out of his skin. Seeing his reaction, Tayama was clearly pleased. After that, they naturally started chatting, and he picked up the dropped magazine. Tucking it under his arm out of habit, they just casually chatted inside the supermarket. As Tayama struggled to pick a snack, he noticed her hesitating. He decided to pull out his cigarette pack, suggesting they draw lots to choose. He matched a cigarette to each snack, planning to flick the pack to let one pop out and decide. Tayama was skeptical but played along, and soon enough the first cigarette popped out, pointing to one of the choices. Instead of rejecting it, she seriously accepted the result. He then explained, "I actually use this method all the time. The first meant getting off work early, the second meant a day off this week." He started to say what the third meant, but stopped. Tayama seemed to have already guessed it, so he didn't elaborate further. After they briefly parted ways, Tayama went back to the smoking area. Staring at the cigarette pack alone, she muttered, "He really can't hide his emotions at all. Stopping halfway like that is basically spelling out the answer right in front of me." She looked at the pack again. If the third cigarette had popped out earlier, his secret would have probably been exposed. But in the next second, she flicked out 4 at once. She froze for a moment, then smiled softly. Meanwhile, he suddenly realized he had left something behind. He rushed back to the supermarket in the middle of the night, utterly panicked. The scene cuts to him kneeling directly in front of the store manager. 10,000 is going to be a huge problem. I'm so sorry. It wasn't on purpose. He never could have imagined that a routine health checkup season would push his daily routine of smoking with Ms. Tayama behind the supermarket right to the brink of coming to an end. Actually, this all started because his company suddenly announced the annual health checkups. He isn't exactly young anymore, and his daily routine and diet aren't very healthy, so the upcoming checkup made him a bit nervous, prompting him to start cutting back on smoking and drinking. But strangely, even though he said he would control himself, his habits didn't change, and he still headed to the supermarket's back door after work every day. Because to him it wasn't just about smoking anymore, it was more like his go-to way to unwind, and Miss Tayama had become an irreplaceable part of that routine. Meanwhile, the supermarket was running a promotion, and Tayama casually handed him a discount coupon for drinks. But as soon as he took it, he admitted he had a physical exam coming up, so he couldn't drink anymore. The moment he said that, the vibe instantly shifted. On the outside, Tayama just smiled it off, but her mind was already racing. Without saying much, she simply changed up her timing and headed to the smoking area early, as if she knew exactly when he'd show up. Sure enough, he showed up. As soon as he walked in, Tayama casually said, "You've got a medical checkup, and you're still smoking?" He froze on the spot, completely caught off guard that she knew. But Tayama just casually explained, sounding lighthearted but with a hint of resignation, as if to say he was just too easy to read. Naturally, they got onto the topic of quitting. Suddenly, Tayama asked, "What if the doctor actually makes you quit? Would he actually do it?" He went quiet for a moment, saying he didn't really know. It was a pretty honest answer, because for him, smoking wasn't just a habit anymore, it was part of his daily rhythm. For a while after that, he started making an effort to adjust his lifestyle, eating healthier, and cutting back on drinking and smoking. On the surface, everything seemed to be going well, but Tayama started getting anxious. She wasn't actually worried about his health, but rather if he quit smoking, their only real reason to meet would disappear. Once that connection was broken, what would they be? She didn't dare to think about it. This anxiety peaked the day his physical results came back. He didn't say much when he got the report, but his expression was clearly off. The doctor advised him to get a follow-up exam because they found something in his lungs. They needed to run tests for serious issues, which could mean something really dangerous. At that moment, Tayama's heart completely sank. She had already started resigning herself to the fact that he was going to quit smoking, and that he probably wouldn't be coming to the back of the supermarket anymore. To her, that was harder to accept than any bad news. The store manager noticed her mood and gave her some very direct advice. If the back door is out, just have him come through the front. It sounded casual, but it pointed out the real issue. The problem between you two isn't about whether you can see each other. But the real question is, are you guys actually going to tell each other the truth? Tayama went quiet for a long time after hearing this. He started to realize that keeping it a secret might actually end up being the biggest headache. So, he decided to take the initiative and find a chance to clear things up. That night, he waited in the smoking area ahead of time. When the male lead walked by, he originally just wanted to have one last smoke like usual, and had even prepared himself mentally for some kind of farewell. He even brought up how much he had enjoyed smoking with Tayama during this time, saying it might have to come to an end. But before he could finish, Tayama cut him off. Tayama was already about to open up and reveal his true identity. But right at that moment, the male lead's phone suddenly rang. It was the doctor in charge of his physical exam, and the news he brought completely changed everything. It turns out there was a mistake in the previous test results. The male lead was actually perfectly healthy with no serious issues. The twist came so suddenly that for a moment, they did not even know how to react. The male lead froze at first, then let out a visible sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Tayama's emotions instantly went from tense to a complex blank state. On one hand, he was relieved, but on the other, he felt a much stronger sense of reality. The crisis was averted, but that perfect moment to come clean was also completely ruined. The male lead wanted to get back to what they were talking about and asked what he had been about to say, but Tayama brushed it off, saying it was nothing. At that moment, the window of opportunity to come clean slammed shut again. A few days later, the supermarket started promoting a campaign for friendly customer service. Since Tayama was one of the nominees for the Best Smile Award among the staff, he was asked to participate in the demonstration. Watching him smoothly switch his expressions, the store manager couldn't help but recall when he first started working there. Back then, Tayama barely ever smiled and had a really cold expression. He used to get complaints about his customer service all the time, but he was incredibly capable at his job, so they kept him on anyway. It was during that same period that he encountered a customer who frequently came to his register just to pick a fight. The guy would always say nasty things, taking all his frustration out on Tayama. Until one day a male customer passing by stepped in, deflecting all the trouble for him. And that person was the male lead 8 years ago. But Tayama didn't know that at the time. He only remembered how the guy used to smoke Chinese cigarettes outside the supermarket, leaning by the ashtray, looking like he was just processing all his emotions from the day. Eventually, the ashtray outside was taken away, and the guy just stopped showing up. He always kept that memory in his heart, but he never connected it to the guy in front of him now. Meanwhile, the main guy actually had a past of his own that he'd completely overlooked. The reason he stepped in back then wasn't because he was trying to be a hero or intentionally help. He just saw someone working hard but getting treated badly, and since he was in a terrible mood himself that day, he just decided to speak up. But that very moment was what made their two parallel lives crossed paths for the first time. Fast forward to the present, after the misdiagnosis incident, the tension between them clearly started to ease up. That anxious feeling that everything was about to end just vanished, replaced instead by a more subtle kind of status quo. But the underlying issues didn't actually go away. Tayama still hadn't revealed who he really was, and the guy still hadn't realized that the person who smoked with him every day and listened to his rambling was actually linked to a specific moment from his own past. And the smoke at the supermarket's back door kept drifting through rainy days and ordinary routines, as if keeping their relationship suspended at just the right kind of cozy, ambiguous distance.